How dumb and dangerous are those that turned up to Saturday's lockdown rallies in Sydney and Melbourne? They called for freedom and an end to lockdowns, but in Sydney in particular, in the middle of another outbreak, all they did was contribute to the probability of a lockdown extension. As my son would say, dur and double dur, just completely thick. These cities are in lockdown. We're all sweating on the restrictions ending. No one wants to be restricted, locked down as we are now. We had residents from the 5 hotspots in Sydney southwest breach health orders, leave their COVID-laden zones, travel into the city, maybe by public transport, who knows, and mix with 4,000 people from everywhere without a mask nor social distancing. I think the New South Wales Premier summed it up superbly today.
Can I say how absolutely disgusted I was? It broke my heart. Millions and millions of people across our state are doing the right thing. And it just broke my heart that people had such a disregard for their fellow citizens. I just ask everybody to think about that. Each of those people who protested illegally, I'm sure, have loved ones. They're going to go home and risk passing that virus on to their most closest people to them. And I just urge everybody that we are making enormous inroads in other places around the world with similar populations and densities to ours. Case numbers would have been in the thousands and thousands. We've stopped that. And what we need to do now is reduce the number of people infectious in the community.
And this was on a day when the numbers went down by 22. We actually got some traction. And while these galoots, many of them anti-vaxxers, gathered to yell and scream, 102,000 New South Wales residents got a COVID test, a record anywhere in Australia. As the Prime Minister said today, those who got tested did way more to get New South Wales to the end of this lockdown than these clowns.
Of course it was selfish. It was also self-defeating. It achieves no purpose. It will not end the lockdown sooner. It will only risk the lockdowns running further. There was 100,000 people who went and did the right thing yesterday and got tested in New South Wales. There were 40,000 people who went and got vaccinated, both at state and GP-based distribution points of presence. There were millions of Sydney-siders who stayed home. They're the ones who are bringing an end to the lockdown sooner, not those who are at putting themselves at risk, those around them at risk, particularly the police at risk. And that was a very selfish act. And I think it offended many fellow Sydney-siders. People understand there are frustrations with lockdowns, but that type of behaviour doesn't help anybody.
And what a motley collection of people they were. Now, there were some legitimate small businesses yelling and screaming about their loss of business, and that is so legitimate it's not funny. But during the middle of an outbreak, you get out on the street unmasked to do it, to make the point. And I saw some familiar faces there. I saw some familiar faces that have probably just come from a Black Lives Matter rally somewhere or meeting somewhere in Sydney. And not only was the march dangerous, it got violent as well. Now, one officer had ink thrown at him. Ink. They are the telltale signs of a professional protester. Who brings a well of ink to a rally? And police, of course, were stunned by the behaviour.
What took us by surprise and what disappoints me so greatly was the level of violence that people were prepared to use. That was unprecedented. That's not Sydney and that's not what we expect. This is not a time for the community to be in conflict with the police. This is a time for the community and the police to work together to stop the spread of this violence. So absolutely not. We were well planned for yesterday, and as you saw, we were well resourced.
So thank you to all of you doing the right thing, and to those of you that aren't, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Ashamed of yourselves. How brainless do you have to be, though? You get zero public sympathy. I was on radio this morning. The ralliers, the protesters, got smashed. You get every politician with power then turning on you. How's that smart? And you get a longer lockdown. That's the dumbest yet. How is that constructive? And this business about, oh, it's our democratic right to protest, you bet it is. But not when you risk the health of everyone else. That's just plain selfish. Now, we just happened to lose another 2 lives today, including this woman, a 37-year-old student. That's the fact. Now, police have formed a task force to charge these people, and they've already nabbed almost 150 of them, I heard, before coming to air, including 2 who it's alleged were cruel to police horses, although the actual footage of the man seen there in the photo punching a horse in the face shows a very different story, more of a graze across the mouth of the horse rather than a punch, to be fair. But just as the illegal Black Lives Matter protest rally in Melbourne last year led to further outbreaks, this will as well. Great stuff. And it will cause the concentration of COVID in southwest Sydney to take over in other areas of Sydney. Let me say clearly, I hate lockdowns. I hate people watching their livelihoods and dreams go straight down the toilet. Statewide and regional lockdowns in particular are useless and hurtful. The way the Andrews government closes the whole of Victoria and the whole of Melbourne when you've got 2 local government areas with COVID is overkill. It creates greater hurt and death than a small outbreak of COVID-19. And most would prefer lockdowns, if you really needed them, just in hotspots. You close those places down that have the highest infections and rely on others to behave and act appropriately. But the actual act of protesting in the streets is the point. Over this issue is what can't be tolerated. In Melbourne, they had their own dramas on the streets, and again, it just gives the government ammo to change its mind about lifting the lockdown this coming Tuesday.
These people should be ashamed, absolutely ashamed. It's just wrong. If you want to protest, protest against the virus. Stay at home, do the right thing, and let's get through this together without selfishly putting other people in harm's way.
I can't believe I'm agreeing with him again. Yeah, protest outside the Chinese embassy maybe. Now in Sydney, Anthony Mundine walked in solidarity along George Street, and there's the proof. If you're on Mundine's side for anything, you're on the wrong side. And to push the media around and take off with their phones, as occurred to a Channel 7 journalist, sums it up entirely. They are fools and morons. You've just prolonged our pain. And we'll start to get those numbers come through later in the week and probably the weekend. Well, the book is about to be thrown at them.